Hello, and welcome to this edition of Just a Few. My name is Patrick Antoine. Thank you for joining me for these videos, and in these videos I take the opportunity to answer a question asked of me requiring some sort of biblical response. Today's question has to do with the age of the earth. The question is, does the Bible provide any idea of how old the earth is? Now, this question could become a very complex one, but for the purposes of a brief response, I will quickly move through a few things that I need to say. Firstly, based on the recorded genealogies in the Bible in Genesis 5, Genesis 11, 1 Corinthians chapters 1 to 9, even in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. Based on these genealogies, one can actually go from creation to the birth of Christ and look at the ages of the people who lived and whose genealogies are recorded there. And even if you make provisions for the skipping of certain generations, which the Jews did in some of their genealogical lists, the age of the earth based on the Bible, and we have no reason to not take these genealogical lists literally, the age of the earth would be somewhere between 6,000 to a maximum, even if you want to become generous and assume that some generations are left out, a maximum of 10,000 years old. How did I arrive at that? From the creation to the flood, the genealogy is presented in Genesis 5. There are 1,656 years from the creation of Adam to the flood. From the flood to the days of Abraham, it's less than 400 years. So you're looking at about 2,000 years there. From Abraham to the time of Christ is another 2,000 years. That's 4,000 years. And then from the time of Christ to now, it's another 2,000 years. So you're looking at approximately 6,000 years. And like I said, even if you cater for any generations left out, you're not going to get past 10,000 years at all. The obvious question that for most of us at this stage is, how do we reconcile that with what some scientists claim, that the earth is millions and even billions of years old? So here's a few points that I want to quickly move through so that you'll understand where these major differences come from. The experts in population growth and demographics, the sociologists, they have these charts and these graphs that, as well as computer simulations, where they can predict what the population of a nation or even the earth would be 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and they factor in all these different things that they normally associate with human lifespans and so on. You could just as readily go backwards from this present population that we have, and you could actually use those same graphs and come up with what the population would have been 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. And if you use those models with a present population of about 7 billion people, if you go backwards, the age of the earth in terms of how long human beings have been here would only be measured in thousands of years and definitely not in millions. In other words, if human beings have been here on this earth and the earth has been around for millions or billions of years, the population of the earth, based on those demographic charts and the population growth charts, would be much more than 7 billion. Even if you factor in times when there are diseases or natural disasters and huge loss of human life, the population of the earth, if human beings were around and the earth was around for millions of years, the population would not be 7 billion. It would have been much more based on normal population growth charts. The next thing is creation, as recorded in the Bible, was not just a miraculous event. It was not a normal event, definitely. It was a cataclysmic event, a major supernatural intervention to produce the creation as we know it. Science has to measure observable events. Creation did not take place at the rate at which things normally take place, and that's what I mean by a cataclysmic event. Let me point out a couple of things here. This was a unique series of monumental cataclysmic events brought about by the supernatural power of God himself, so that science could not observe these things. Scientists could not measure the events that took place in what the Bible describes as creation, so that the phenomena that we see produced by the natural laws of nature today are not the same as what produced the creation, so that the physical laws of nature were built into the creation by God after these cataclysmic events that produced the creation. So that, again, creation was not some uniform thing. It was a stupendous display of divine power that produced it. So we will always become confused and lost if we assume that creation, as described in the Bible, was achieved by following the laws of nature. So that according to the Bible, creation took place within a 7-day period in ways that are not the way the normal laws of nature produce outcomes. The next thing we'll realize about the creation as described in the Bible is that God created everything mature, and that is significant. One day after Adam was formed and God breathed life into him, you met Adam, you would not meet a 1-day-old baby. Adam was created mature. Everything in the creation was created mature, so that if you met Adam and he was 1 day old, he did not appear to be 1 day old, because he was created with age. He was created with maturity, so that the day after he was created, you met him, you're going to meet a mature man. Same thing with the creation. The day after the creation of the universe from nothingness, or from nothing, you would see a mature creation, and you would assume this thing has been around for 1 million years or millions of years, because God created it with age, and it would have had the appearance of age, but it wasn't there all along. That's just the way God created it. The whole question, which came first, the chickens or the egg? Well, simple, the chicken. God created mature chickens, and they had the ability built into them to reproduce through laying of eggs. That's the way God created it. So keep that in mind. Everything appears to be older than they really are in creation. That's because that's the way God created it, with the appearance of age. So a scientist, if he had taken samples of Adam the day after he was formed, you would assume, everything would seem, this is a man 100 and something years old, a mature human being, but he is only 1 day old. He's only been here for 1 day. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that things existed as long as they appear to be. Let me move quickly along here. Some people talk about the length of time it takes for light to get from the stars to here. It's measured in light years, and that it's thousands of years before the light from the stars would reach the earth. Again, we are assuming that God placed the light in the stars and it had to travel all the way to the earth. Again, in creation, it wasn't, the speed of light wasn't the speed of light now. We are assuming that the speed of light has always been the same. Scientists have from Australia and other places have proven that the speed of light was not always what it is now. And in the creation, God created everything with the light from the stars stretched across to the earth instantaneously. So he didn't have to wait for thousands of light years for the light to reach the earth, as we are assuming. That's an assumption. So the flood was another cataclysmic series of events, and the flood can explain a lot of the geological formations and so on that we have on the earth today that normally would take thousands of years to be formed. Because the flood was another cataclysmic series of events, the flood can explain why so many features that we think would have taken millions of years to form would have formed rapidly in a period of months, sort of like what we see happen when there's a volcano and the effects of it. Formations come afterwards that normally would not have taken that quickly, but in a short time, in a few days or weeks, certain formations appear because a volcano is not a normal event. So the flood, and with all the huge weight and volume of water and the drag of this volume of water across the surface of the earth, what is called hydrological drag, would have produced these canyons and these underground caves and so on that we see, underwater caves that scientists have discovered. These things, the flood could explain it. So there's no need for us to assume that because scientists, or some scientists, say that it would have taken thousands of years or millions of years for these things to form. We must not think that all scientists agree with that. There are some scientists who agree with what is called a young Earth, an Earth that has been around for less than 10,000 years. The miracles of the Bible is the same thing. Jesus turning water to wine. Normally, water has to go through all the different processes of going through the grapevine and so on, and takes months for it to form itself into grape juice and then to be formed to wine. Jesus did it instantly because a miraculous event doesn't require the amount of time to produce an outcome. Creation and the flood were not just miraculous, cataclysmic demonstrations of God's power. And that's why there's no need for us to factor in millions of years for certain things that we observe to have taken place. Remember, creation was made with the appearance of age, and there's no reason for us to be ashamed of agreeing with the Bible that the earth is 6, 7 or so thousand years old and that it's a young earth. So that's my response to that question. Hope it made sense to you. Hope I didn't confuse you. But based on the charts in the Bible, we believe that the earth is relatively young, and it's no more than 6 to a maximum, generous maximum of about 10,000 years since God created the universe as we know it today. My name is Patrick Antwine. Thank you for taking the time to hear me out on this. And if you have a question, there's an email address there on the screen. Feel free to respond or send that question in via that email. Until the next time we meet, grace and peace be multiplied to you.